Let me see, I think, I do not see two of the folks who wrote letters, so we can talk about that, but, yeah, okay.
You ready?
I'm ready when you let me go.
Go ahead.
I'd like to call the Boardwalk and Beach Committee meeting to order. It's 2 p.m., 1:59 p.m. on Tuesday, August the 30th. And would like to do roll call first. Howard Menaker,
Here.
Frank Cole,
Here.
Craig Thier.
Here.
You want to, Honey Fisher?
Here.
You want to go by Kathleen? Steve Curson.
Here.
And I'm Jay Legree, and we have a quorum to do business. And I'd like to say that Lieutenant Sullivan is here from the police department. And we're glad he's here.
Thank you.
And one of the first things we're going to do is approve minutes. And has everybody had a chance to go over the June 29th minutes? And do I hear any corrections or additions or any reason not to approve them? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Honey Fisher.
I wasn't here,
So you have to abstain.
I will.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Howard Menaker seconds. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
They passed unanimously, except for the one abstention, and that's fine. What I'd like to do is combine Lieutenant Sullivan's presence here with some of the email that we received and just have a discussion as best we can concerning some of the problems that we received complaints from correspondence. And has everyone had a chance to read Mike Strange's letter? Lieutenant Sullivan, have you had a chance to read that?
I believe it was an email that was
Yes,
sent?
sir. It
Okay, I
was,
might have responded to that email as well.
He and his wife were walking on the south end of the boardwalk
Yes.
near the Norfolk Street Pavilion. Okay. What kind of complaints and what kind of incidents have we had concerning bicycles, people doing foolish things on bikes, and throughout the summer?
I can tell you that was probably a rarity. We haven't had too many complaints of people trick riding, I think, which is what he was referring to, somebody going with, doing wheelies down the boardwalk, obviously saying some things that weren't appropriate. But I think I did, when I emailed him back, said that, call us right away, then we can send, at least, especially one of our bike officers down who can get to places very quickly.
Did he mention to you that the folks that were doing this crazy stuff and using that crazy language were riding electric bikes? He called me and told me, he said, they were going e-bikes.
Oh, no, I wasn't aware of that.
I hadn't been either from his letter until we were talking via telephone later on, and I said, I'm seeing a lot of e-bikes. And he said, oh, by the way, those are e-bikes.
Right.
He said, I don't think they could have been doing that, wheelies like that. He said, unless they had those e-bikes. So I said, thanks, Mike. But
So one of the things Chief and I had a discussion about was with the ordinance and e-bikes, and it does specify in here, bicycles under ordinance 9811. Bicycle, tricycles, and any other vehicle propelled only by human power may be operated or maintained on the boardwalk. So there was a question about dual-purpose bikes. So some e-bikes are, you can certainly pedal them, and that would be human-powered, and then switch it over to, I don't know a lot about e-bikes, but I do realize that some people can switch it over to a power-assisted thing. So if that was something that needed to be adjusted in the ordinance to say, and I don't know how exactly you would do that wording-wise, but
yeah, I remember when we did the amendment. I think we we were taking into consideration that there might be other ways to power a bicycle.
Sure.
So we said only by human power. Now, that may lead people to think that there's a little bit of ambiguity in there. I don't know, but I would think that only by human power means only by human power, and an e-bike would not qualify under that. But, and I think maybe Chief mentioned that to me, that we need to work on that or need to define that or something. But what does everybody else think about that? Should we bring that up to the mayor and say, you know, we need to amend this ordinance to be more definitive?
I want to hear what Frank has to say.
Most states have adopted the three-class system, Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. And Class 1 bikes are generally defined as bikes that only give you an electric assist. There's no throttle. The assist, you can only get up to 20 miles an hour unless you can pedal faster than that. And so Class 1 bikes in most areas are allowed where bicycles are allowed. Class 2 often feature a throttle. They may have an electric assist as well, but they have a throttle. So it's possible to use a Class 2 bike without pedaling. And if you ever see the e-bikes going down the road, you can usually tell, obviously when they're not pedaling, you can tell right away. But if somebody's pedaling at a slow cadence and they're going 15 miles an hour, chances are they have an electric assist. And then there's Class 3, which are usually, but not always, fairly expensive. You'll see some high-end road bikes, some performance mountain bikes that are Class 3, and they're capable of 28 miles an hour. And they may or may not have an assist. So,
Class 2 and 3 have the throttle, Class 1 does not.
Class 1 will not have a throttle by definition.
Do they pretty much look the same when you see, can you tell which ones are which?
You know, the fat tire electric bikes are becoming increasingly popular.
Right.
We don't deal with them that much, but most of them are Class 2. So they feature a throttle and they have an electric assist.
So you can switch it back and forth? Okay.
Jay, I wonder, is there, if the definition of bicycle is only under human power, how is motor vehicle or motorized vehicle defined? Because once you put the motor in that, that may then address the throttle issue, but I don't know what our definition is.
I think we say 8 miles an hour is the top speed allowed for you mean like a cart or a wheelchair that would be motorized or some other mode of conveyance besides a bicycle? I think we say 8 miles an hour, which I think, I mean, it covers everything I see on the boardwalk that comes through, although I'm seeing a lot of I gotta tell you, and I sent Chief an email the other day. I saw 2 young folks had managed to squeeze both of their rear ends on the seat of one of those fat tired bikes. And they were coming off the boardwalk. They'd been on the boardwalk, they were coming off the boardwalk, coming down Prospect Street, and they were pulling a trailer with a kid in it. It's just mind-boggling what happens.
And you'll see cargo e-bikes. I saw yesterday out at Quillen Plaza a mother with 3 children on one bike. Now, this was a fairly expensive bike. It's the type of thing that you see in places like Portland. Now we're starting to see it around here. So she wasn't reckless. She was using it as transportation, and that's something that's kind of important to discuss when you're talking about electric bikes is, you know, you'll see a lot of our summer workers heading into town now, and the e-bikes are their traffic, you know, their transportation solution. When you get down to brass tacks, and the state, with the state parks and the bike trails, they have a similar policy or regulation that no motorized vehicles. So you can't have a mini bike or a moped and go blazing down the bike trail on a scooter. In a purely technical sense, some of these Class 2 electric bikes that have throttles, the throttles can be disabled. And if there was ever an enforcement effort and the state wanted to, you know, put an end to the motorized vehicles on the bike trail, at any time they could start checking the bikes and say, well, do you have a throttle on this bike? Is it disabled? because a lot of the Class 2 bikes also are electric assist. So,
I ride the trail every day. I go every day to the radar tower and every day back to Rehoboth. And I'm seeing them, and
some days you'll see more people on electric bikes than acoustic bikes.
incredible.
So,
I'm seeing more and more just every day. And I hate to be stereotypical, but usually the people riding those cotton pickers would be better off pedaling. And the protective gear they wear, you can tell their age. The people over the age of 55 usually wear baseball caps. Under 55, they turn them around backwards. And that's what you see on the, I'm being facetious, it's not true. But I swear, almost 90% of the people should be pedaling and not riding those. I'm seeing almost all fat-tired bikes. Maybe 1 in 5 are not fat-tired. 1 in 5 are conventional, they're heavy framed usually. But you oftentimes see little ladies riding these. And if I see a little lady, a 90-pounder, coming at me or something like that, and she's on a bike, I know that it's almost has to be an e-bike.
and it's a long-term trend, and this is the season, I think, that it becomes
course.
more pronounced, and you see, they're not dominating the bicycle industry, but it's getting there.
What are you hearing? Are you hearing that the state's going to step in and start making, start being more stringent?
They're sometimes 2 steps behind, and in a lot of cases, it's reactionary. So, you know, there's a new trail that's going to go from Lewis to Georgetown. And it's
That's
18
correct.
miles and it's paved. And because it's paved, you can, reach higher speeds. It's straight as an arrow
It
for
is
the
straight.
most part. So unfortunately, we'll probably come to a few well-publicized incidents and accidents and injuries before anything really gets done. But I would think that Rehoboth would want to look to see what the state is going to do, if they have any plans on doing anything, and try to model any ordinance, to mirror what the state's going to do. Because it'll be a problem for them as it is for us.
Right now, I don't think we have any ordinances at all once you get off the boardwalk. And the boardwalk says only human powered. But other than that, I think our streets and bike trails and everything are just whatever's out in the state. I don't know what do you think we should recommend? Should we make a recommendation for the commissioners? What should we talk about? Should we recommend that we do not allow e-bikes on the boardwalk? Should we encourage a clause in there that prohibits e-bikes?
First off, it might be useful to see what Ocean City, Maryland did. They had an ordinance banning e-bikes in October of '21. I believe they passed an ordinance, so it might be
Which was last October.
yeah, a good idea to reach out to them. May have been October of 2020. The second thing is to, explore the idea of a class system. The Class 1, it would be really difficult to enforce a ban on e-bikes if you went and looked at Class 1 e-bikes, which are electric assist.
Is everybody okay except me? Probably everybody's okay.
So
Okay.
I would think that it would be an enforcement issue more than anything else.
Okay. Do you see the state requiring licensure of electric assisted bikes like they do mopeds and scooters?
I think they've gone the other way as in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, if you had an electric scooter in the state, you had to have it tagged. And then it was the problem of, well, how do you tag something that doesn't have turn signals and things like that? And I think they've relaxed their registration so that most electrical vehicles don't require any kind of a tag unless it's a golf cart, basically.
I think you're going to get a lot of complaints from ordinary bikers that ride the trail because these e-bikes are just, my average speed's about 12 and a half, 13 miles an hour. And I pass most bikers on the trail, most regular tourists and e-bikes pass me like I'm standing still. And I'm sure that other folks feel uncomfortable as well. Now, will they just have to get used to it? I wonder what's going to happen.
One thing's for sure, they're probably you're gonna see even more next year.
I'm sure that's true, and I'm wondering if the state's getting, do the bicycle association folks ever give you feedback on what's coming or anything like that? Do you rent e-bikes?
We do at one of our locations, but we charge enough to scare away most people. We charge $40 an hour, $80 a half day, $120 for one day. And when somebody comes in who looks like trouble, we're fully booked.
I hear you.
Jay, if I can
Yeah, go, Howard.
suggest, maybe what we ought to do, and I don't know how you want to do this, I don't know if you want a member of the committee, or you want staff, or you want Glenn, to look in and see just what's the status of the state law on electric vehicles that would cover electric bikes. Also take a look, as Frank said, at the Ocean City, Maryland ordinance. And then and maybe take a glance around at other resort towns and see if there's anything, and come back here and let us see if there's a recommendation that we would make to the mayor and commissioners. Because I think the issue is not now, and it's not November and December, it's next May.
You bet. Oh, you bet. We're
So
close.
if we can take a look at it and bring it to the mayor and commissioners now, I think we can get ahead of it.
Lieutenant Sullivan, do you guys have contacts that you could look into with Ocean City folks and see what their experience has been? And I'm sure there are probably other towns who've had the same concerns, not just us. Other beach towns. I know folks at Cape May and up the New Jersey coast. See what their thoughts are, and I'll make some connections and see if I can get some feedback. But as it stands right now, I'm not sure for certain, not class 2 or 3, but I'm assuming that only human powered means only human powered. So we could probably enforce that if we decided to enforce that. Just some thought.
It might be tough. I mean, sometimes you see bikes, the newer generation of e-bikes are lighter, the technology's evolved. So in some cases, they don't even look like an e-bike. They look like a regular bike. They've done a very good job of hiding the battery. And it's a tricky topic. I think overall, the enforcement this year on all things on the boardwalk was pretty good. And I think overall, there was, at least my perspective, was very few incidents on the boardwalk. Everybody seems to be gravitating towards the state park. So the boardwalk was, I thought, remarkably uncrowded at 8:30 in the morning in the middle of the summer during high season. So do you want to task the police department with discerning, is this a class 2 or a class 1 or a class 3? And I don't have any easy solutions to offer, unfortunately, so.
I tend to agree with the last part of Frank's comment, which just comes back to enforceability. And when people are flying by, what can your cadets really discern from looking at a bike? And maybe it does come back to what is the speed and telling people to slow down. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Surreys, and I know we've had this conversation before. I'm not bringing that into this conversation. I'm just bringing it back to what was mentioned earlier with the trailers, right? I mean, is that something, since we've got some time here, and if you talk to Ocean City, or we look at some ordinances elsewhere, are there things there that we need to be concerned about?
Let me read you the last paragraph of Mike's letter. Unfortunately, at the south end of the boardwalk, there seems to be a lot of folks not paying attention to the city regs as to bicycles and dogs. This was the first time as to a bicycle event where we got such rude response, as opposed to, thanks, I didn't know. The dog situation has really gotten out of hand, and there are several folks that habitually disregard the rules every night. When we first informed several of them, they responded with, I know, and then proceeded to just continuously disregard the rules every night, and these folks, it turns out, are year-round residents. The others have appreciated that we advised them of the rules so that they could stay out of trouble. The literature and science is quite clear that when the perceived unimportant society laws are not enforced, the bigger problems get worse. And then he has, unfortunately, I don't have a solution to the number of folks who the police ranks, but I thought you should be made aware of this continuing degradation on the south end. Thanks, Mike. And then Suzanne Good said, I too have noticed a fair number of bicycles on the boardwalk when I walk on weekday evenings, and to a lesser extent on weekend evenings. I've not seen anything, she has said, nothing as egregious as Mike Strange reports. I've even seen a few electric bikes both in the morning before 10 and in the evenings about 9:45. Perhaps these folks have disabilities which allow them to use e-bikes even when motorized vehicles are prohibited. I confess I don't know the rules there. E-bikes are becoming more common on the State Park Trail and on the Junction and Breakwater Trail, even though I am assuming they are flouting the Delaware State Park regulations. Amazingly, I haven't seen any close call. Have you heard of any incidents between people and bikes on the boardwalk?
No. None this year. And like Mr. Cole was saying, it's been relatively quiet early in the mornings, up until 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. There's not been those crowds of people not till later in the afternoon, which is then you can't have bikes on there. But
I ride the boardwalk ever at 8:30, and I have not seen any incidents. I've had people step in front of me, a lot of kids, a lot of people, but you just, after a while, you start anticipating it. You just ride with your hands on the brakes and ride slowly so you can stop. But I have not seen any incidents, and it's interesting but I haven't. I guess we all work together on that or something. I'm going to read a little bit about what Brian wanted to say. His thoughts were that bikes and dogs were getting more common on the south side. He had seen a number of people flaunt the rules in front of cadets, and he was worried that the cadets were concerned about not being friendly to the tourists. And he was wondering if that was a problem, or if what our thoughts were on that score. And I don't know. What do we tell the youngsters that are coming in as cadets? Do we say, "Hey, take it easy, don't get"?
right. So I mean, there's a fine line. We have to, obviously, we want to be a clean, safe, and friendly city. So when our cadets are out there, they're advised of all the ordinances. They're given the E code to tell them, hey, this is what's legal, what's not, what's illegal. So when we do our training, we can certainly tell somebody, hey, you can't have a bike on the boardwalk after 10 o'clock. And if they go to an escalating situation where then that requires a full-time police officer to go down, and we've seen a lot of that with tents this year. But as far as, with dogs, we do train, in our training, we say that, hey, you can certainly approach somebody and say, hey, you're not allowed to have that dog on the boardwalk or the beach. And they say, some of the times that we get a response that, oh, this is a service dog. So we're allowed to ask 2 questions. The first question is that a service dog? And they've already identified it as, and then what function does it perform? And then they could tell us, oh, it is, it detects seizures. The conversation has to end there because we can't say anything to them. They don't have to be marked. They don't have to have paperwork with them. And we're not going to get into, like, there's certain situations where this is an emotional support dog is not considered a service dog. But, in their training, we train them to say, okay, how far do we want to take this? Do we want to take this to the point where somebody then gets into some kind of litigation over the fact that they have a dog on the boardwalk? So I can tell you that we are out there in the mornings with our Polaris addressing dog violations. People early morning, they're taking dogs off of leashes and, running them on the beach, and not so much on the boardwalk that early in the morning, but on the beach. But they are certainly trained that, that we do have these ordinances, and, we respond to, complaints that people are calling in. People do call in complaints on dogs on the boardwalk and on the beach as well. So, it's one of those things that we could be out there, we can't be everywhere. And I think that's how I addressed Mr. Strange's email. We can't be everywhere at all times, and especially with our seasonals. Our main concentration, obviously, is the boardwalk for the first couple blocks there, and then on Rehoboth Avenue. So as we get further south and into that area, we do rely on people to call. And people have called and said, "Hey, there's a dog down here. It's on the boardwalk. It's on the beach," and right away. It certainly doesn't help us, I guess, to hear something after the fact and then we can't address it. We want to know when it is, because I think our response time is around 90 seconds within the city. So if it's not a full-time police officer, certainly is, one of our seasonal cadets. So
Brian does say, he says, I have watched on many occasions whereby a cadet has turned her back on a blatant misdemeanor so as not to get involved. I wouldn't go that far. They're just doing their job, I think, the ones I've seen. But you hate it that folks think that folks have that perception.
Jay?
We have dozens of dogs on Prospect Street virtually every day, but I don't think they get on the boardwalk. I think they just go down to the beach and go south. I mean, dozens.
Jay, I had the opposite experience this year. A week ago or 10 days ago, I had a bike stolen. I had seen the fellow at the Wawa at 7 a.m. And so right as I was getting ready to call it in, I came upon this fellow. He gave me the bike and he kind of took off running. And within 5 minutes, there was a cadet that I gave a good description to dispatch. The cadet had him and he confessed, and they arrested him for stolen bike. So, I look at things like that, and they're doing a good job with all that. And I wonder if some of this stuff isn't just societal. I mean, society has changed. Everybody knows it. I think we're fairly lucky here as far as what we get and the problems that we have. And maybe some of these things are isolated incidents. And, I wonder how much of this nuisance stuff is, the problems are even solvable versus, what the big picture is, and the important emphasis maybe should be placed on, catching bad guys instead of chasing down everybody who's got a dog and who's skirting the boundaries of the rules.
Yeah, except as Brian says, if you start letting that happen, it's going to become the rule. And that's what's happened on Prospect Street. If I talk to folks on Prospect Street and say, dogs are not allowed to be off lead in the city limits of Rehoboth, they'll tell me what I can do to myself and what I can do next door in a heartbeat. And then they'll tell me that dogs are allowed on Prospect Street and they're allowed on the beach. And I can say, no, that's not true. And then they'll start all over again. And I think we run a risk by letting all that go on day after day after day. I know My neighbor Frank Coover's really upset about it. And he's talked to Chief a couple times. I've talked to Chief once or twice. But the dogs, loose dogs on the beach are a problem on the south end of town. Now, we could keep them off the beach if we wanted to enforce that. We just choose not to. And they have nowhere to go south. That's all private. So there's no place they can cut through to get onto the beach. They have to go all the way to Dewey to get onto the beach. And they do that, but virtually dozens of dogs are on Prospect Street every morning.
But dogs aren't allowed in Dewey during the day anyway.
In the morning they are, that's correct. You're correct. But in the morning they're allowed
Are
to
they
go to
allowed on
Creek.
Poodle Beach all day? If they
No, I think it's only till 9 maybe. Is it?
And I don't,
9:30, I think, to 5:30?
like that section, I think when you get past, and this was the line, it actually goes near Penn Street.
Is it
is
Penn?
Where
That's
the
our-
city of Rehoboth, so one of the things Chief had, and when we're discussing it, I guess, was there probably needs a little bit better signage down there on the beach to say, hey, this is, you're now entering the corporate limits of the city of Rehoboth Beach, because I think when people go at the end of Prospect Street, they automatically turn right and say, oh, well, I'm not in the city anymore, so I can, have the alcohol on the beach or have a tent wherever I want, or dogs, or,
Yeah, that's true. Dewey has a patrol officer that checks them all for licenses. And they have to pay a fee to get onto the beach in the morning. We thought about that. It's hard to know. I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine. It sounds to me, it kind of goes back to what Lieutenant Sullivan said earlier. There's a fine line between enforcement and welcoming visitors. And I think our officers do an amazing job of walking that fine line. But I think what we also have to realize is this is a manpower issue. As we just mentioned, this may be a signage issue. This may be an education issue. It's not just enforcement. And I think that that's part of what either the chief needs to sit down with the city manager or someone and say, again, looking forward to next season, how do we avoid these problems, whether it's dogs or it's e-bikes or whatever? Because I don't remember, Lieutenant, how many cadets were down this season as opposed to other years. But it was significant enough that I think it made a difference in enforcement.
yes. So this year we had 21 cadets, we had 26 openings. We're down to 6 right now. So the date that they had to stay with us before they had to, pay back any of the monies that we incurred for, for the training and everything, here was August 16th. And so naturally, everybody has to go back to school August 17th. So that happened this year. So we're at 6 and we're splitting them up, kind of putting them on weekends and as many hours as we can, physically do without, putting too much on them. But yeah, certainly we were down. Last year we were half that. We were 13 seasonal officers. So, and they're basically our eyes and ears out there, as you know. And
during the season, I never really witnessed any of the seasonals speaking to any of the visitors, whatever, but I just noticed everything was different. I didn't see much trouble this summer on the north end when I walked in, and I just attributed to the fact they were just doing it very nonchalantly and doing a real good job. Past couple weeks, though, yeah, it's still not out of control as far as I have seen, but you do see a handful of dogs every day, and like even walking over here today, bikes on the boardwalk. Some people are going to push the limit.
Obviously, with the city, it's a unique thing because we have to constantly educate. So the people that are here today might not be here tomorrow.
Right.
We can certainly tell our local population should know the rules if you live in the city. But we're having to educate consistently every day, every week, every weekend. For the influx of people, that's a natural thing. With a beach town, everybody's coming down, so you have that influx of tourists. So it's definitely a challenge, obviously. That.
Do you have the same thoughts that Frank had? Just didn't seem like we were as packed as we had been in the past. Am I being correct? in,
I don't think the boardwalk is
Yeah, the
as
boardwalk,
crowded in
I'm
the morning
in
as it
the
used to be.
boardwalk, yeah.
And that was morning hours. That's just from, my perspective. The morning hours didn't seem like they were as crowded, but then as the afternoon went on, that seemed like it got more crowded, so.
But it was still not as bad as other years from my observation, yeah.
Do you keep, I know Chief keeps numbers of complaints and incidents. Has any trends there? Of course, the summer's not quite over yet, but.
Yeah, so he has a few of the, statistics here as far as, we had, theft complaints, from year to year. For a theft complaint for 2021 was at 88, this year was at 75. And he has a percentage here that 90%, a lot of them were unfounded theft, like from the beach. People would call and say, we had my cell phone, my watch, everything was stolen off the beach. We go down there and then actually their bag is over here now. And so they're classified as unfounded complaints. We did get quite a few graffiti in town. That was a big problem. That was a big problem with Delaware State Police Troop 7 as well. I'm happy to say that we do have a suspect that was identified through our press release. So that, and it's a juvenile. So that we're going to be working on doing that arrest for the graffiti. As far as shopliftings, it looks like we were right around the same thing. That's always, I say par for the course for summertime. 2021, we had 33. This year, we had 34. So 34 shopliftings.
Do you segment those out by whether or not they're on the boardwalk or whether they're in the middle of town or?
For shopliftings?
Yeah.
So shopliftings are, they could be anywhere on Rehoboth
Okay.
Avenue or the boardwalk. So, it just seems from my experience, a lot of them are the clothing stores and T-shirt shops and things like that. So it's not really, like high-end certain things, but, the clothing, of course, is, expensive from some of those shops. But the complaints are, right around the same as what they were last year. So we're not seeing any more, which is a good thing. And we're not seeing any less, which is, maybe not such a good thing at some point. But we haven't had any violent crimes. Some of the assaults that we had, a lot, most of those were non-resident domestic related assaults. So those, people coming into town and most of the time, just from my experience and other officers' experience, there's alcohol involved.
Yeah.
And, things get kind of out of hand for people coming into town, so.
Lieutenant, about a week ago, you guys picked up someone who had ditched a firearm, right? A pistol?
Correct.
And that was a seasonal officer that was first alerted to it?
Correct.
And you took the gun off the street, kept the public safe. I read stuff like this, and this is the type of stuff I like them to concentrate on. So sometimes the nuisance stuff, while it's annoying, and for people who live in town year-round, and especially live in the first couple of ocean blocks, as I do, it can get very frustrating. But society has changed, and I know your job is probably a lot harder than it was 20 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, ironically, that the situation you're talking about with the firearm, that started from a marijuana complaint. The seasonal observed somebody smoking marijuana, and that turned into, somebody being from the Baltimore area, the press releases out there, carrying a firearm and, other drugs and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that's, it's kind of what we sign up for. So, you could start out from a very, very minor complaint to something like that, which is, at least it puts it out there, at least for us, that, if you're coming into town and this is what you decide to do, then, this is the consequences that, can happen. Certainly if you're carrying a firearm, that's not, that's illegal.
How often do we encounter someone carrying an illegal or unlicensed firearm?
I would have said that was the first one this summer, but I would not be correct. So during the 4th of July, we were handling a separate incident on the boardwalk, and a person alerted us that a gentleman wearing a pair of basketball shorts dropped a firearm from his basketball shorts onto the boardwalk and tried to conceal it again. So we addressed that. That person was arrested, was not licensed to carry a firearm, concealed carry a firearm as well. So I think, like Mr. Cole said, the society is changing. I mean, you can take a look at some of the major cities around here and see what is really going on. And I think we're very fortunate in the city to have our police officers and, you know, such a small jurisdiction and our response time to let them know that, hey, you know, you have 90 seconds. So that's about what I've been told our average response time is. So, and especially with our seasonal officers out there, you know, kind of our eyes and ears to report these things and see these, you know, even what some might consider a minor violation, but you never know where that will lead. So.
Yeah. I'm always vigilant about losing our brand. And Tony Pratt, who's used to be the Seashore director of DENREC, has a story that he tells about cities that are famous tourist cities, and they lose their brand because they let crazy things go on. And I think we do a really good job of holding on, but that doesn't mean that we can't be vigilant and try to keep our town as pristine and friendly and do no harm as we can. I personally had an incident in front of my house day before yesterday. An officer and a cadet had rounded up a couple of kids who were, I don't know, drugs, whatever it was. And they were doing a fantastic job of keeping their cool, especially the officer. She was just doing a great job. And I want to commend the folks on, I'm sure you can go back and look it up and see who it was. But they did great. They did a good job. I'm proud of them. Any more questions for Lieutenant Sullivan?
I just want to say, I was on the boardwalk, I guess, last Friday night, right at Rehoboth Avenue, and 3 or 4 individuals on bikes came up onto the boardwalk, and there was a seasonal officer on bike, and he noticed them right away, and we went right down the north end of the boardwalk to chase him down. So, you know, he was on top of things.
They're
That's
good
what we want to
stories.
hear.
They're good stories. And the last complaint I have, before we get on to our project, it says, "Good morning, Jay. Was on the boardwalk last night, passing the Verrazano Monument next to the Boardwalk Plaza, and could not help but notice the whole area, including the monument, is totally overgrown with weeds and seagrass. I thought we had addressed this issue previously, and the city had agreed to take care of the area." And then he says, "Thanks for all you do, blah, blah, blah." The answer to all that is yes. We did this, and we had been promised that things were going to be better, and there's a huge clump of seagrass growing right in front of to the side. You can still see the Verrazano Monument, but you got to look at it from the south angle, and I'm going to mention that in the Commissioner's Workshop on next Tuesday. But that covers the complaints. Let's talk about our commercialization project. Where do we want to go with what we're doing? I ran up my iPad and looked at Boardwalk, and there's about 2 paragraphs, and maybe I know that Lynn wants to redo the website, and Howard, you were the main go on that. What do you think? How are we doing? What do you think our plan should be going forward?
You know, Jay, I haven't spoken to Lynn since she was last at our last committee meeting.
Yeah.
But I do know that she's working on cleaning it up, making it more efficient, making it more user-friendly. So if you want me to, I will check back with her and specifically ask the question about where she's headed with boardwalk regulations. And I think this relates to the subject we've just been talking about. I think the more we can make it clear when dogs are allowed, when bicycles are allowed, what kind of bicycles are allowed. I think people, we've all recognized and we've all talked about the fact that there's a societal shift going on, but I think people basically want to follow the rules. But if they don't know the rules, you can hardly hold them accountable. So I'll talk to Lynn if you want me to and just sort of see where she's headed on that and see what her timeframe is.
Okay?
Just check in with her.
Ever since I've been on this committee, I've always pushed to have one date for the dogs and bikes, the same dates. Now it's confusing. You don't know if it's September 15th or October 1st or May or, it's, I think it would really streamline things, make things a little bit easier to understand.
We're going to be talking about parking at the next workshop. And way back in August of 2018, way back in August of 2018, the parking committee gave a report on parking for the city, and they had a lot of recommendations. One of the recommendations they had was to get the dates all together. And their dates were, I thought we had a chance to make that go this year, but we got sidetracked. And their dates were I think it was 1 May to 30 September. And I don't know why we couldn't make all dates that way. That's close to where the dogs are now.
Right.
And bikes, I don't know why we couldn't do that. Or we couldn't. Now, here's my question. Are there better dates? Or would we be better off to go 15 May to
15 September.
15 September?
For everything.
Yeah, for
For
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
That includes parking.
Dogs on the beach.
Now, you know
bikes on the
Suzanne Good
boardwalk.
wants parking to start like 15 April or some darn thing. But do we think that would be great? Howard, what would you recommend?
Well, with all due respect, I think I remember a discussion at a recent commissioners meeting.
Yes, it was.
And
We
I
did
think
that.
the result was that you shifted the dates about 5 days, maybe 10. So, I mean, I agree with Steve. I think if we can unify, there's a set of summer regulations. They begin on this date and they end on that date. I think that would go a long way, but, you know, I'm not sure that's where the commissioners are.
I know, and, well, we were headed, well, you remember all that, what happened. And we got sidetracked. Tony wouldn't go along with everybody else.
It's worth another try.
For your business, Frank, when are your power days?
Well, I've always thought this, and this has been a view I've held for a long time. The only problem I can see practically is if you're a vacationer, let's say you're in your 70s or in your 80s, and you come to Rehoboth the 3rd week of September every year because that's when you come to Rehoboth. And maybe you ride an adult trek or something like that, and all of a sudden, you know, you're not able to ride all day. You have to limit it to 10 a.m. Could be an inconvenience for some of our visitors. On the other hand, I tell a lot of people you're not allowed to ride on the boardwalk after 10. Many times they'll thank me. Other times they'll, keep right on going. So, they've kind of been warned. And I'll say this, I take a sick pleasure when I see that they got pulled over by a cadet because they had it coming at that point. So the thing is, if you ended at September 15th and maybe extend the boardwalk hours, the restrictions until the 1st of October, would you have even less compliance than you have now? In other words, when you get to the end of August, these locals, and not all of them live in town, they live in the surrounding areas, they feel like they should be able to ride on the boardwalk because it's the off-season. I don't agree with that, but they have this mentality that it's slow now and they can always feign ignorance. So if you extended it to October 1st, would it seem even more unreasonable to your average person? That would be my only concern. Otherwise, I love the idea of October 1st until May 1st. You can ride on the boardwalk and have your dog on the beach, and you don't have to feed the meters. It would be a much simpler approach, in my opinion.
And that's kind of.
Well, I was gonna say, that doesn't tie in with the parking, though. That's two separate dates, start and finish with parking.
I'd have to change them all.
Yeah, as I recall, that's where the commissioners were trying to figure out was parking and left turns, I believe, were the two big issues, and they tried to coordinate those, and honestly, I don't recall if they did or not. I don't know if those regulations all went into place, if the meters went up the same day that the left turns were prohibited. I think they
I
were,
think they
And if you
do.
and they
recall,
used to be two different dates.
they had to go around and put new signs up because we didn't go along with what they thought was gonna happen. So if you look at all the signs, you'll see those 15 May was a little placard that somebody pasted on there. Because we didn't come through with what we were supposed to come through with.
Well, but again, I think for the purposes of this committee, we're talking about whatever regulations there are on the boardwalk.
And the beach.
And the beach, right, exactly. Let's see if we can unify those. And
Can we?
we'll let the parking committee and whoever else deal with trying to
Yeah.
synchronize
Are
the
we
other
gonna
ones.
be under pressure to put our dates, the same dates that the parking folks decide to start and stop?
I don't know.
What dates do we?
I'd be okay with it, but
Sure,
that's me.
sure. I would, no, I would be too, but shall we say we really like 1 May to 30 September?
Well, that's not what the parking is.
That's somewhat aggressive. I think you'll get more
What should we say?
pushback.
Huh?
I think you get more pushback on May 1st, October 1st, than you would get on a May 15th, September 15th. Baby steps. First year, try that. Everything is 15th. And then if we find out that it would be beneficial to move it, you only have 2 weeks to worry about, 4 weeks.
What we're trying to do is find a date and stick to it.
For
That's kind of
everything.
where we are now. We have a,
Well, there's already,
2-year.
parking already has a date, and believe me, I've looked at the sign 100 times. I'm still not sure if it's the dogs or the bikes that are September 15th.
yeah.
So there's a date for that, either one of those, and then one is off by 2 weeks.
I
So
believe the dogs are October 1st. They're allowed on the
Okay,
beach
but the bikes are
October
the
1st, and
15th?
the bikes, it's, the restrictions are in place up until the 15th.
Right.
So on the 16th, you can ride all
We
day.
got 2 out of 3 that match, and one is off kilter.
What? Maybe we don't care when the bikes would, nah. can't do
To be
that.
honest, I would be fine either way, September 16th, October 1st. I just think it's the practical consideration is the average person using reasonable judgment, are they going to feel compelled to comply, or is it just going to become another enforcement headache? And, would the dogs be a problem if they were allowed on the beach and the boardwalk starting on the 16th of September? And I don't know the answer to that. I go and
There are a lot of tourists still on the beach at 15 September, a lot of them.
And if you think back, I know that in the late 90s and the early 2000s, Rehoboth's dog ordinance was the most restrictive. In other words, dogs were not allowed on the beach and boardwalk until November 1st, and then all dogs, and I believe it was April 1st, that's when so we were a month different than the neighboring towns of Bethany and Fenwick and some of the other towns. And maybe 15 or 20 years ago, that was changed, so it's more or less in line with what Lewis does. October 1st, dogs are allowed on the beach. May 1st, you can't be on the beach anymore with your dog, so.
And I think that would cover pretty well. By the 1st of October, there are significantly fewer folks on the beach.
Yeah. Now, we do have Sea Witch. I mean, that's not a consideration, but in years past, we've also had the Greyhounds come to town. And I don't know if that event's still popular anymore, but they generally stay in Dewey, and then you have, maybe that was the reason why it was changed from November 1st, and it will roll back to October 1st. I can't remember, but that might be an important consideration. And perhaps it'd be useful to ask the beach patrol, if September 15th, they still have a skeleton crew on the beach after the 15th, I believe, not too many. But if they think it would be a
Sure.
I
problem.
think,
I'm
I
not
was
sure
talking
they're
to
that long.
Captain Giles on the way in. He said they're patrolling the beaches, I think, until the September 23rd or 26th, somewhere around that time period.
But at greatly reduced levels right now.
Yes, yeah. They lost half their guards already.
If not more.
I think he has on here 12 to 18 guards still working for the beach.
And that's down from
They hired
what,
65,
Lieutenant?
I think.
That was down from what at its peak?
Yeah, they had, it says hired 65 lifeguards, last day for Sunday, September 25th, and they currently have 12 to 18 guards working, so out of 65.
And I don't see the Greyhounds on the,
And do you
Event
know,
list.
That's
is
'cause
the
it's a
Greyhound
Dewey event.
on the city calendar for this fall?
oh, no, I'm wrong, here it is.
No. Oh. It is on the
Greyhounds
calendar?
walk on the 9th of October, so that would be clear
Either way, yeah.
on our boardwalk. Yeah. Something to think about, something to talk about. Next question. Frank, do we want to think about contacting all the commercial establishments and asking them what their opinion of the summer was, if they had suggestions for us, or if there are things that we could be doing for them or anything like that, just to set up contact? I know we've talked about that a little bit. And you have a few of their emails.
Yeah, I talk to them a lot, and I think if we wait until after September, maybe after Labor Day, that would be the
By
smart
all
thing.
means.
Yeah, but most of them will be happy to tell you how their summer went.
It would really be interesting to know, I don't think we've ever done that before, and it would be great to make contact with them, find out. Our next meeting is, who has their calendar? With them, I had to look in my briefcase to find mine.
September 27th is the last Tuesday.
Okay.
Is that what we're doing now?
You want to try to do that at 2 o'clock on the last Tuesday?
As long as it seems like we're changing it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We get kicked off.
Oh, okay.
And I think once the CDP's over with, things will be a lot smoother for the next 10 years. Watch me tell a lie, but we had a lot of CDP stuff going on. And today, we had a meeting this morning.
Yeah.
But once we get trees out of the way, supposedly, all these things are gonna solve themselves. Would you prefer another date besides Tuesday?
I
We
would.
picked Tuesday, would you? I bet you.
I'd prefer Monday myself. but-
Well, except Monday has all the holidays. And
But
we
we only
never,
have a couple, and that's just me.
Labor Day, I don't know how many we have, but I'm just trying to avoid those.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not practical, maybe Wednesday's the middle of the week, is that I'm just trying to find a day. Ann, what are your thoughts? Do you have trouble with, are we a problem as far as scheduling goes because of all the Tuesdays?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. We just need to find a day and then do it. Let's stay on Tuesday.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine,
Honey,
that's
I
fine.
know I'm stepping on your,
No, that's fine, I'm good.
make the last Tuesday of the month, which is what, you said 26th?
27th of September.
27th? Oh, yeah, 27th September. Okay, let's keep on rolling, and let's do that. Let's talk about a start and a stop for dogs, bikes, and keep talking about that, because it would be good to do what Steve said, get things, maybe we're the ones that started off. I don't know, but anyway, I think it's something to think about. And Howard, we're gonna hold off on tips, guidelines, and rules and information until we hear where Lynn's headed.
Exactly, exactly. And I think Honey and
And
Patricia,
Patricia,
we're already talking to Lynn.
yeah,
Earlier, I volunteered to do that. If they want my
That's
help,
right.
that's fine, and if not, we'll just
That's
let them
right.
keep,
But-
try and coordinate with her.
but yeah, and I think the last time I talked to Lynn, she's working hard on a project, a stormwater project right now, trying to publicize what we end up doing. But she has thoughts about revamping the website, and I want to support her 1,000%. And let's talk, Jimmy and Brian will probably be back the next meeting, Frank. Let's talk some more the next meeting about, figure out a way to see if we want to find out how the merchants did and what their problems were, what they'd like to talk about. I can say that the recycling program is just about doo-doo. I mean, we're getting contamination of almost 100% of the cans.
Such a shame, yeah.
And if here's what they do. They check to see how many, first off, we're not getting a lot of stuff. The tops of the cans are for aluminum cans and bottles and stuff like that. And things that, paper and stuff they can put in. They sit next to a regular garbage can. And you know where I'm headed. The cans fill up very slowly. And the trash guys will tell us that if a can is left 2 or 3 days without emptying, a recycling can, even though it's less than half full, it'll be contaminated. And they're getting 75, 80% of the cans are contaminated
With what?
with diapers, pizza boxes,
Steve,
empty, half-eaten
it's
hamburgers.
remarkable to watch somebody try and cram a pizza box into a hole big enough for a tin can. And yet, it happens every week.
While they're standing next to a regular.
Right, while they're standing next to a trash barrel. Yeah.
And I guess we have to just, and I probably shouldn't be saying this publicly, but I guess the most important thing is the optics. You know, we're trying our best, we're doing recycling, we're giving everybody the opportunity to do it, but you can't justify it money-wise. It's labor-intensive. We can't send it to the Jones Crossroads because it's just too contaminated. We're having to separate it out by hand. Guys doing it on a concrete platform across the highway. So that's the recycling program of the boardwalk. I don't know what to
It is a
say.
shame, but I think in the last 3 weeks, I've seen 3 national news stories on the fact that recycling just isn't going the way it should for exactly this reason. Because there's so much contamination, and they have to consistently stop the recycling, sort out things by hand. It becomes very labor intensive, and even at that, there's still so much contamination. You know, as you say, diapers, pizza boxes, and who knows what else being thrown in what's
Stuff you
supposed to be a
don't even wanna-
recycling
You don't even want
container.
to touch.
It just, all of it, you don't want to touch. But I don't think we're alone in this issue.
The Europeans I was stationed for 5 years in Germany, and they have a different way of doing it. They do it with money. They regulate the cost of picking up ordinary trash, and they reward recycling. Each apartment building will have its own recycling container, and they check it for contamination, and if it's contaminated, they get fined. And they can't afford to throw it in the regular trash because it's so dang expensive. So people compost as much as they can, they recycle as much as they can, and they minimize their trash as best they can because it is so expensive. And I think the way you deal with it is with money, and when we, as long as we have the facilities we have, I think we're gonna face contamination forever.
Okay, what kind of results are we getting from those big belly compressors?
I don't know see, they take contamination, because they just compress everything. I don't know how that's working out. Let's find out. Let's ask Kevin I'm hoping to get him here next month. He couldn't be here today, but I'm hoping that he can be here next month to talk about the Baltimore comfort stations. And I'd like to also ask him about some other things. And those big bellies, I'm curious. The ones I see on my bike look good. They're not dirty. Somebody's picking them up, taking care of them. But, yeah. Yep.
Does the city not empty those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We empty them, and we also go out there and empty the one on Church Street that goes toward Junction Breakwater Trail, the bike trail. We empty those. I have some figures about on the money we've spent on the Baltimore Avenue comfort stations, the Beach Patrol headquarters, and the Delaware comfort station. But rather than go into that, let's wait until we can talk to Kevin and get him here. And have we all seen the presentation that the architectural firm gave on the Baltimore restroom? Do we think we know enough about it to ask Kevin questions without having to have those? I'm not sure whether we can get the architect in here to talk to us or not. We might try it. I'll ask.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessary to ask the architecture firm back in. I think if we have questions, Kevin should be able to answer them. He's been working with them pretty closely, so I would hope we can have that discussion with him.
Okay. I think we can talk about size, scope, appropriateness, the future of the boardwalk, how we want to deal with the new structures on the boardwalk, and limit our talk to the Baltimore comfort station, the headquarters of the Beach Patrol, and what our vision of that is, to talk about that. I think we can talk about that, okay.
Well, and I would agree that we need to talk about that, I think, at some point, and it's probably premature. But, if there is to be a new development between Baltimore and Rehoboth Avenue, then how the Baltimore Avenue Beach Patrol Station fits in with that in proportion and all of that, you just automatically end up involving that as well. So I just think we need to keep that in mind. Yeah. Okay.
Do we have other things that we want to talk about for future agendas? We're going to talk about all the things that we've talked about today. What are we missing? Do we want to go back and talk and talk any more about, maybe get an update on what Verizon thinks they'd like to do? Anybody, try to find out if.
What's happening with 5G, yeah.
Yeah, what's happening? Let me see what else Patricia had on her list. She had a number of things that she sent, most of which we can't talk about. And let me see if I'm missing anything that she recommended, that she was interested in. She wanted to talk about handicap issues regarding access to the beach. And here's what Patricia said. At a previous meeting, Kevin Williams stated the beach mats were not handicap compliant. What would make them compliant, and can we move forward in ordering compliant beach mats. So I guess I'm wrong. I guess we can talk about that with Kevin when he comes. Does anybody have any messages from anybody that wants to talk about something?
No, I'd like to see at some point, or hear about better ways to advertise that we now have these lovely changing stations, because people don't know they're there.
No.
And they walk up to the kiosk down the information center, and they say, where are the bathrooms? And he says, over here and over here, because there really aren't signs in the front. There's signs on the side, but not in the front. And he said that they don't know that there are changing stations. You go into the restroom, and there's a sign there that says, you can't change here, but it doesn't say, but you can change right next door. So they really need to somehow advertise that better. I walked into the restroom on Rehoboth Avenue today, just checking things out, and there's a sign pasted on the wall that says, no changing in here. Changing stations are at Funland. Well, Funland is closed, so it's not at Funland, it's next door to Funland. And people are just,
Yeah, and Patricia, to me, that's a perfect example of the kind of thing that ought to be out on our website.
yes.
When people look at what are the rules and what are the services at the beach and boardwalk, that's exactly what we've been talking about.
Yes, yes.
And Patricia wants to leave us with one thought. Please propose we ban dogs and all animals on the boardwalk from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Oh.
Do we get kickback from the folks that Howard was describing, the locals who want to come into town and bring their dogs?
She doesn't mean all year round, does she?
Doesn't say. Let me see. She left me 2 messages. Let me see the other one. Patricia, if you can shout loud enough, I might be able to hear you. No, she doesn't say whether it's all year or just during the summer months. But it sounds like.
Because we already did it during the summer months.
We're already doing it in summer months.
Right.
Maybe there's something to talk about. What if we did that? Would we raise a firestorm?
Well, I think 8 o'clock in the evening on a weekend, you shouldn't have dogs on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
They're going to get stepped on.
What about from 8 a.m. what about during the day? She says from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. After 8 p.m., I'm not too interested in seeing dogs on the boardwalk.
No, dogs shouldn't be on, I mean,
No.
we have certain dates, and they're not on the boardwalk at all during those dates. Maybe she's talking about after season.
Could be.
Yeah,
Tricia, you need to send me another message.
we're just gonna
But
further
you better do it quickly.
confuse. Yeah.
Jay, if we're talking about other issues, again, I kind of alluded to it, and I want to be careful about what I'm supposed to say when I'm not supposed to say. But I think, again, the context of the beach patrol station with whatever commercial development is going on the boardwalk, size, scope, density, I just think we need to know what's going on. And I don't know if it's our place to render recommendations or opinions on it, but I think that getting the complete picture is really essential for us to be able to address any of those issues.
Yes. Here's my problem. There is so much litigation that happens. We have appeals right and left, and I have a feeling that I don't even want to say what I'm going to say. It's possible that once the site plan is approved, that we still may get appeals for anything new coming on the boardwalk.
Right, and I understand that, but as I say, if it's nothing more than just information, I would
Why
hope we
can't
can
we-
get the information.
Yeah.
That would be my request. Then we can get whatever advice we need from lawyers or anybody else about what we can do about it. But if we don't know what's going on, I think we're at a handicap.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The danger is
Again,
giving, you guys, well, we've all read the briefs and we all saw what happened.
I'm not sure how that, knowing all that would impact decisions that we're making. We're making decisions about dogs and bikes.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're talking size, scope, future of the boardwalk, buildings, density,
Yeah.
things like that.
But that's planning commission stuff. That's not our job, is it?
We're the boardwalk committee, and we should be able to tell us people what we think about
Yes.
things that are happening on the boardwalk. Now, we saw in the briefs what happens when things are said and then lawyers pick up on it and it becomes a major part of their defense or their appeal. So what we say is important, we just can't, we have to be really careful with what we do, with what we
That's
say.
why I don't want the information.
And Jay, let me throw in one more element, which probably complicates matters, but I'll do it anyway. You know, there is a task force that the mayor created about Baltimore and Wilmington Avenues. And they expressed, I'm on that task force, they expressed some opinions about the intersections, if you will, the entries between the boardwalk and Baltimore and Wilmington Avenues. And again, I think with a major city-funded piece of construction there, I think we ought to go back and look at that, or maybe invite somebody from that task force to come report with us so that, again, so that we know what the full picture is.
And from that information, we could talk about size, scope, density, those factors without entering into
I would
any
hope
other.
so. I would hope we could, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
We can talk about how to do that, because I'm not sure. I mean, the mayor was the de facto chairman, so I
Yes,
don't know if
the-
we ask him to come talk about it or somebody else. I don't know. We'll talk about how we do.
Yeah. 'Cause I think that's our responsibility as a boardwalk committee, to do that,
Yeah,
to do that.
I think so,
We
too.
gave our opinion on height, on view shed. It was taken very well. They didn't listen to us, but it was taken very well, and the path was forward, and we're gonna have a commerce station in Baltimore. So, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think I'll try to convince the mayor that we're gonna stay on the straight and narrow.
Okay.
Any other suggestions? Does anybody have anything else they want to say
Yeah, I just want to say one thing.
before we quit?
And you said it a couple of times. You kept repeating that we're the boardwalk committee. Actually, we're the boardwalk and beach
Beach
committee.
committee.
And I always say we don't give the beach enough love.
That's right.
And, you know, it seems like all our problems are occurring on the boardwalk, but there are issues that we should look at beach-wise as well.
Yeah, and we've been doing that. I'm just haven't been emphasizing it enough. I don't know, Lieutenant Sullivan, how do you interface with the enforcement folks for the beach? We have an enforcement officer who covers the beach. How do they interface with you? Do they take their orders from you, or how does that work?
So, excuse me, they are, under the supervision of Chief Giles. So the complaints that we've had were compliance officers. Beach Patrol has our radio down there, so they can call our dispatch and say, hey, we have somebody refusing to take down a tent. So when the compliance officer comes up with somebody, and that's happened more times than not, where somebody has refused to take down a tent after the compliance officer advises them of what the ordinance is. So then we go down there, as police officers and address the situation, and then, so we work very well. I think they were doing a great job. There was some, at least some statistics that Chief gave me about how many tents, and I think, and I was actually kind of surprised at this number, but so takedowns, as far as the guards were concerned, were 2,214. And that's from Memorial Day to August 15th. The police handled 1,076 takedowns. And then
Whiz.
just us, the police officers, going down and addressing the tents. So the guards did one, the police came down and addressed the other one, so we had a total of 3,293 tent takedowns since Memorial Day, which is a lot. That's a lot of.
We thought, the commissioners thought that once we get the ordinance passed and the word got around, it wouldn't have any problem. I think your numbers show that we just need continuous enforcement, doesn't it?
And we only have a compliance officer during the weekends. He's not there, Chuck's not there during the week. And I talk to him a lot because he comes down and talks to us. And he'll have 100, 150, tents to take down on a Saturday or a Sunday. The number's pretty high.
There was because I made contact, I went down on the beach with a couple of our seasonals to address two separate refusals, but there was a female guard that was one of the compliance officers as
I
well.
haven't seen her much this lately. It's
Yeah,
usually-
not lately,
Oh,
but,
right,
but
right.
during the
There
during
was,
the season.
yeah. Yeah, I
So-
think, it'd be nice if we could step that up.
Right.
Not your responsibility, but,
But I think that's working very well, with, there's somebody's a compliance officer on the beach that addressed the problem. And we tell, even with the parking division, if there's a problem, somebody they're not equipped to handle, a situation once it escalates, and that's on their end, not on the guard's end. So, call us, let us know, and then we can go down there to address the situation for,
The food truck set up at the end of Prospect Street for a while, and once we complained about that, that was moved to the city limits where it's supposed to be, and we have not had any more incidents at all. That worked well. And I think they're still, maybe they're on the weekends, I don't know, at the end of the city limits, on the other side of Penn Street and everything. One morning I woke up and someone had driven their car out on the beach. And that was fun to.
was it the car or was it the ATV that the hotel uses? Because that happened as well.
It was a gray SUV,
Oh, okay.
Jeep. And it'd gotten about halfway between Prospect and Queen before they ran out of sand. They didn't have any way. But anyway, that was fun. It wasn't fun. It was fun. Hearing nothing else, I adjourn the meeting, and thanks everybody for everything.
Thank you.
It is 3:21.